Good morning and welcome back. Before we get started, let's have a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much that we have the opportunity to gather together and to get deeper into your word and to come to a better understanding of it, Father. We thank you for that understanding. We thank you for your hand of protection upon us, Father, and I pray that you would continue to have your hand of protection upon us as this virus comes through, as this multitude of things that are happening, Lord, and we know that you're still in control, and we just turn it over to you, God, and just seek you in everything. And we give you all the praise, the honor, and the glory in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so this week we get to be in chapter 13 of 2 Samuel, and I'm just going to say it's the beginning of David's troubles. Remembering that God said, from your own household, troubles shall come. So, chapter 13. And it came to pass, after this, that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister, whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend, whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down, and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down, and she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all the men from me. And they went out every man from him. And Amnon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her, and said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her, and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, be gone. And she said unto him, There is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. Then he called his servant that ministered unto him, and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out, and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head, and rent her garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? Behold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shears in Baal-hazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold now, thy servant hath sheep shears. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? But Absalom pressed him, that he let Amnon and the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, Smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. Then the king arose and tare his garments, and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's sons come, as thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came, and lifted up their voice, and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. Wow.
Wow. One thing leads to another, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. One thing it just seems to gather as it rolls downhill.
Yeah.
This is really a sad chapter in the life of David. We look at David's sin, and we see that it restrains him here. So let's take a look again. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Now Amnon is a half-brother to Absalom and Tamar. They have the same, David is their father, but they have different mothers. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very subtle man. Jonadab is his cousin, and he's also a cousin to Absalom and Tamar. And he's kind of a sneaky kind of fella.
That's a nice way to put it.
I'm trying to be as nice as I can. Yeah, I really wanted to say that he's a weasel, but I think a sneaky kind of man is probably the more polite way to go about it. So verse 4, and he, being Jonadab, said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? He's asking. So there's something obviously physically wrong with Amnon. And Jonadab is seeing this. And he says, why are you wasting away like this when you're the king's son? Why are you not being taken care of? And what's going on? And then he says, won't you tell me? So, he says, wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon says, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. So he confesses that he loves her.
What he's really saying, I lust for her.
Yeah, he thinks he loves her.
Yeah.
But really it's a lust. And then afterwards, well, we'll get there. I don't want to jump ahead of myself.
Okay.
But right now, he thinks he loves her. So, in picking up in verse 5, and Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So we're going to take a time out right there. So it's Jonadab's idea, lay down, make yourself even sicker than you currently are, and when your dad comes along, because he's the king, ask him to send Tamar to make bread for you, to make some cakes for you so you can eat at her hand. And then you get to spend time with her. You notice he didn't say, then you can have her.
No.
He didn't go that far. He simply said, have her come here so that you can eat at her hand. You get to, you get a few sneaky moments to cherish, to be with her. So verse 6, so Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David sent home to Tamar, his home. Tamar is living in David's home at this time. And David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. See, David didn't see anything wrong with this. Oh, okay. They seem to be, they seem to get along great, and I could understand, just needing a little comfort, and no big deal. He's not feeling well. And for her to go and cook for him, maybe she's done it before. He didn't know.
It's a good brother-sister relationship.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the request as it is. And so David allows it. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down. And she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. She didn't see anything wrong with this either at this point. She thinks, yeah, it's no big deal. It's just Amnon. I'm gonna go down and fix him something to eat, and maybe he's having trouble trusting his servants and whatever, and he just wants me to come and someone he trusts, a family member, to come and cook for him. So she does. Verse 9, and she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all the men from me. And they went out, every man from him. So Amnon is plotting, has plotted the entire time. But here he's saying, I don't want to eat in front of these guys. Make everybody leave. And so everybody left, leaving him and Tamar. In verse 10, and Amnon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thy hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. Again, she's thinking, okay, well, he's not really looking very well. He's probably feeling kind of weak, wants to, just sit on the bed or something. And okay, I can do that. She's not done anything dishonorable in any of this. She's been an honorable person through this all.
It seems to me, Dave, that this Jonabad planted a terrible seed
Absolutely.
in Ammon, and he was willing to sacrifice his sister to take advantage.
Yeah. And Amnon had no pity either.
No.
It's really shameful what he does afterwards. So verse 11, and when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her and said unto her, come lie with me, my sister. We remember when Joseph was grabbed by Potiphar's wife, saying the same thing, come lie with me. Well, Joseph, being the stronger of the two, was able to run away. Tamar is not, but she does resist. Verse 12, and she answered him, nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. It's against the law. God wrote out the law about brothers and sisters, half-brothers, half-sisters being married. And she's reminding him of this very thing. This is wrong, and she even calls it folly. In verse 13, and I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Yes, he would.
Yeah.
Yes, he would. Because it's against the law. And David has turned back to God. Amnon didn't. Amnon sees the pagans and says, hey, that's normal. They do that kind of stuff. The other countries maybe, but not Israel. They're not supposed to. God said no. And she's reminded him of that. But now she's just trying to stall for time. Hey, wait, just hey, go talk to Dad. Maybe he'll work it out so we can get married. Well, he doesn't. Verse 14, howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. He raped her. Let's just put it point blank.
And the other thing, Dave, his sickness was all
conjured up.
It was all in his head.
All in his head, because he was stronger than she was.
Yeah.
He grabbed her, forced her. First of all, if you're really sick, you don't have a desire for sexual activity.
Right.
You just want to get well.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, the seed that Jonabad planted, is just mushroomed into evil act.
Yeah. Amnon took what Jonadab had said and just started running with this thought, and it's an evil thought. And just allowed it to grow and to grow and to grow, and kept feeding that thought until it becomes the full-fledged sin that it did. So he forced her. Then in verse 15, then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, arise and be gone. In other words, get out.
Yeah.
He hated her. Really what it is he felt the full guilt and shame upon himself for what he had just done. And instead of accepting that as his, he put it on her. Because he knows that he did wrong. But he's going to blame her. Golly, that sounds familiar these days, doesn't it?
Isn't it though?
Doesn't that sound familiar these days? It's not your fault. Yes, it is. Yes, it was. It was all on Amnon, the whole thing. But he puts her, he just looks at her and says, get out.
Get out.
It was cold, it was harsh, it was wicked. And listen to her response in verse 16. And she said unto him, there is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. She's saying that you are being more cruel in the way you're kicking me out and in your mistreatment of me than the actual rape was. I think she's kind of saying you're acting like an animal.
Yeah. And also at that time, she realized what she was going to have to do to not wear the clothes of a virgin anymore. And that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're casting me aside like I'm nothing now.
yeah.
You know, look at what you did to me, and now you're just going to throw me aside. Verse 17, then he called his servant that ministered unto him and said, put now this woman out from me and bolt the door after her. In one of my studies, where it says this woman, it could also be translated as this thing. He may well have said, take this thing and put it out from me. But we'll give him an ounce of credit and say woman. I don't
think he said that.
I don't think he was that decent of a person.
No.
But notice he says, and bolt the door after her so she can't come back in. Put her out like she's the one who's filthy.
Yeah, because she would never have any interest in going back anyway. Why
No.
lock it?
Yeah, honestly, she's going to leave. Why would she go back into that?
Yeah.
But this is Amnon and his twisted way of thinking. Verse 18, and she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent her garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head and went on crying.
What humiliation.
Yes. Yeah, he has absolutely fully humiliated his sister that he supposedly loved. He didn't love her. He lusted after her, wanted to take her innocence. And he did that. In verse 20, and Absalom, her brother, said unto her, hath Amnon thy brother been with thee? He took one look at her. And he's asking, did he rape you?
Yeah.
And obviously she answered him and said, told him the affirmative. Because he says, but hold now thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. Tamar didn't go home to her dad either. She stayed with her brother because she felt more protected there. Basically what Absalom was saying is, we'll bide our time. He's your brother, and I can't just go and deal with him right now. If he were a stranger, I could go kill him today. And would. But because he's our brother, we have to think this through. And think he did.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a thinker, creative, much like his dad. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. You stop right there. That's the end of it. He was angry. Okay, so what? What did he do? Nothing. See, here's the horrible part of this crime. Normally, if a man raped a woman, there was the option that they could pay, and then they have to marry her. And she has to be their wife, and they can never, ever, ever, ever divorce her. That's by God. Here's the problem. They're brother and sister, and God says you can't marry your brother or your sister. how do you deal with that situation? Well, just had David turned to God and said, hey, how do I deal with this? How do I handle this? But I think David is feeling a little deeper than that. How do I go and tell him what a horrible sin it was, what he did, when I myself am guilty and everybody knows that I was guilty of adultery and murder and coveting? Amnon coveted, and he's guilty of rape. He hadn't murdered anybody yet. Oh, all he's going to say is, Dad, I'm a step behind you.
Yeah.
What's David going to say? How's David going to fight that? How's he going to argue that? Well, he should be a decent father and say, you're going to honor that by sitting in my prison. Because what I did was wrong. What you did is wrong. And we're both going to be punished for what we do. Your punishment is a prison. Would have kept him alive. Would have kept him from the throne as well, but it would have kept him alive.
You notice, Dave, that in this whole chapter, there's not one reference to God. They just left him out of the scene.
Yep.
And they could have gotten a lot of help from him if they'd asked.
Yep. Yep.
But it's kind of like, I'll do it my way.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like I said before, the only thing you get in this world is the shame of your sin.
Yeah.
God had nothing to do with that. You're all on your own on that one.
That's right.
But he has everything to do with getting you out of it. Yeah. And so, picking up in verse 22, and Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. So Absalom quit talking to Amnon altogether. That's what it means. Neither good nor bad. He didn't speak to him at all. You're a sick and twisted fellow.
Gave him the cold shoulder.
Absolutely. Will not talk to him. And I imagine Tamar didn't either. I imagine Tamar probably didn't see him ever again. Verse 23, and it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shears in Baal Hazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. Now this is a typical thing that happened. When it was time to harvest, or for the sheep shears to come, and they would have a big feast and invite the family. And it's been 2 full years. 2 full years. We got to kind of keep that time frame in mind here. Verse 24, and Absalom came to the king and said, behold now, thy servant hath sheep shears. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. So, Absalom is coming knowing full well David's not going to accept. He comes and says, hey, we're having this big party over here, the sheep shears are in, and we're going to have a great big feast. I'm inviting everybody, won't you please come? And David says, you know what? No, because it's going to be too much of a burden for me and my servants to come and do that. It would cost you too much. You see, David loved Absalom too.
Yeah.
He did. And Absalom presses him again. Really? Come on, it's okay. And David still refuses and saying, no, because we don't want to be too much of a burden to you. It would hurt you financially. So then verse 26, then said Absalom, if not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, why should he go with thee? There's a good question.
Yes.
Why would you want Amnon there? Well, you have to think too, And I'm sure that this thought went through David's mind. Amnon is the crown prince. He's the next in line for the throne, blood-wise. And it's been 2 full years. Absalom hasn't done anything. Nobody seems to, it seems like Amnon has gotten by with this horrible crime. And David figures there should be a royal member at this party.
David might have also thought that it maybe could mend the relationship between the two brothers, in just some fleeting hope.
Right.
Something.
And also there are all those witnesses.
Yes.
All those witnesses. Surely he's not going to do anything in front of everybody. And may well have told Amnon, don't be alone, with him ever. So, verse 27, but Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now verse 28, here's the thoughts of Absalom. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. They thought it might be a coup. That's how much they thought of Absalom right now. Absalom is angry at Amnon and Amnon only. And he is seeking Amnon's death for what he did to Tamar. So, when Amnon gets drunk, and I'm sure that Absalom had something to do with making sure he never ran out of the wine.
Yeah.
As soon as he was drunk, Absalom said, kill him. And they did. Of course, everybody freaks out. Because what happens when somebody shows up and pulls a gun? Everybody runs, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. They don't want to be next. Just in case it is a coup attempt and Absalom should turn and kill all of his brothers, they take off. So, pick up in verse 30. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there's not one of them left. Well, that's not exactly accurate. It's not exactly accurate.
No.
It's the rumor that got spread out in the confusion of everything, and somehow somebody ran well ahead of everyone else and shows up with misinformation. But it's the only information David has at this time. Verse 31, then the king arose and tare his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. And here's our buddy Jonadab. Verse 32, and Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, answered and said, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Let's just continue into verse 33. Let him finish speaking here. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. How does he know?
He already knew.
He knew well ahead. Jonadab is a subtle man. He spoke to Amnon, and Amnon raped Tamar. I suspect he had some meetings with Absalom as well. And now, Absalom has assured him that, look, all I want to do is kill Amnon. How do I do it? He's a subtle man. Well, you got sheep shears coming, don't you? It's been 2 years. Throw a party and invite him. And if you should accidentally, get drunk and trip and fall on a sword, well, that's how things happen, isn't it? But he tells David, no, just Amnon's dead. David doesn't pick up on, well, how do you know?
Yes.
At least it doesn't tell us that he did. Not in this chapter.
It's a first indication of fake news.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And Jonadab is, now Wolf Blitzer. Dan Blather.
It started with 3 letters, didn't it?
Yeah. So he's saying it's just Amnon that's dead. Like it's not that big a deal. Verse 34, but Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, behold, the king's sons come, as thy servant said, so it is. Again, how did you know? Younger David asked a man about that question, about how do you know that King Saul is dead? Well, because I stepped on him and made sure his sword went through him. But he didn't ask Jonadab. So, picking up in verse 36, and it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came, and lifted up their voice and wept, and the king also, and all his servants wept very sore. These men are traumatized. One brother just killed another.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure all in front while they're having this celebration at a table.
Mm-hmm.
And they witness this murder.
Yeah.
And just like you said, I could have figured that this is our brother getting ready to take position, possibly, of the throne, because all of the princes are right here at this table.
Yeah, we're all right here. If he kills us all, who gets the throne?
Yes.
Right? So, they're not sure, did he say kill him or kill them?
Yes.
Uh-oh. So they panic. They get up and they run. Now, Absalom doesn't follow after them, and none of his servants go chasing after them. They just let them go. Let them go. We don't need them. Verse 37, but Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. We're going to stop right there. Absalom went to Geshur because his mother is from Geshur. This king, Talmai, is his grandfather. He ran to Grandpa's. He ran to his grandfather's house because he knew he'd be sheltered and protected there. He would tell what happened and why. And his grandfather would probably support him on that. Say, you know what? He deserved to die. You should not have forced your sister.
You remember, Dave, in 1 Samuel, David went in and did damage to that Gazar, and took a wife from that experience. And now David is...
And that is their mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is their mother. Absalom and Tamar's mother is the wife that he took from Geshur. And so there's a peace deal because of her with them. Amnon could well have just trashed that peace deal.
Yeah.
I mean, not thinking, I'll destroy the peace deal. That wasn't his intent. His intent was simply to have his sister, but Absalom's intent was to destroy Amnon for what he did. So he goes to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. Goes to Geshur because he knew he would be safe. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there for 3 years. 3 years. 39. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. Now, there's some couple different ways of thinking with this verse 39. That the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom. Did he miss Absalom? Was it he longs to see his son again? Well, if he did, he could have simply sent a message saying, all is pardoned, come home. The relationship he has with Talmai would have certainly talked to Absalom and said, go home. Go and be with him. If he says that no harm will befall you, then no harm will befall you. If you want me to send and ask him to send your personal guard to protect him coming back and to ensure that he is safe, then I'm sure David could have done that. The other thought, David wanted to go and jerk a knot in his tail.
Yeah.
And I think that's the more correct. I think David has had time to stop and think. David has had time to get beyond his mourning for his oldest son Amnon, seeing that he was dead. He had time, and now he's been reflecting, and the desire is to go and get Amnon and put him on trial for murder.
And Dave, where it says King David longed, that really means he was consumed.
Yeah.
Consumed. I mean, that's all he was thinking about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's over and over in his mind.
That kind of validates what you were just saying.
Yeah, same like with Absalom. That's all he thought about for 2 years, is the enjoyment of watching Amnon die.
Yeah.
All this because a young man couldn't control his lust. Mistook it for love to the point that he wasn't eating proper. And I have no doubt that, there was something there in his mind. He felt this. But what he felt was wrong, and he knew it was wrong. And when he carried it through, so this is why Jesus said when you look at with lust in your heart, you commit adultery with her.
Yeah.
Because once that thought is there, if you feed that thought and allow it to grow, it will lead to that sin.
Yeah. Jesus raised the bar.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Amnon didn't just think about Tamar. He constantly thought of being with Tamar. Now, and apparently she's a very beautiful, beautiful woman, but that's your sister. Half sister or not, she's still sister.
I think she was beautiful inside and out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The way she acted and responded.
It just shows her character throughout this as just being spotless.
Yeah.
Just being spotless. I mean, she tried to talk him out of it. She tried to remind him, look, this is wrong. Brothers and sisters don't lay together like that. It's not right. It's not meant to be. God said so.
Hey Dave, on that, I looked it up, and if there's anybody that wants to read where that law is, it's Leviticus 18:11.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and it lays it out in that plain English.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Language. He didn't lay it out in English. He laid it out in Hebrew, but still, I mean, it's plain language, and says, you will not.
yes,
And so she tells him that, look, this is wrong. And she calls it folly. It's a mistake. And she says, you're going to be a fool in Israel for having done it. And where do I go? How do I hide my shame?
Yeah.
You bring all this upon both of us. We can't do this. And she even tries to stall him and said, well, maybe you could talk to Dad. Only she doesn't refer to him as Dad. She says the king. And surely he would give me to you. Then it'll be okay. Hoping just for a moment that he'll let her go. And say, well, I could do that. No.
Yeah.
No, he says, no, I need it now. I'm going to rob you of your decency and your innocence at this time. Shame on him for it. Now, truthfully, what David should have done upon hearing what happened is David should have gone and applied the law.
yes,
Yes.
David should have gone and had Amnon arrested and jailed, tried, and then when convicted, sentenced. And perhaps let Absalom be the executioner. Because that was the penalty for it. God didn't play lightly. God didn't take this stuff lightly. And he still doesn't. He's the same then, now, and forevermore. This is a horrible crime. What Amnon did is a horrible crime. What Absalom did is also a horrible crime, also punishable by death.
Isn't it amazing how Satan attacks the family?
yes,
Yep.
And he's done it ever since the Garden of Eden.
yes,
Yep. And God had told him, had told David, from your own family troubles will come because of what David did.
Yeah.
Because of what David did. It doesn't matter how much goodness David did prior to all that. The fact that he sowed discord means he's going to reap discord. God meant it. You reap what you sow.
Yeah.
You reap what you sow. And if you can't go out planting corn and expecting wheat. Right? You're not going to get wheat unless you plant wheat.
Sow the wind, reap the whirlwind.
Exactly. And this is an F5 coming through David's life. This is powerful
And sad.
and horribly sad. But the sadness isn't over for David yet.
No.
It's going to continue. We're going to see that. We're going to see that. This is heartbreaking because it's brother on sister. Revenge within family. See, what Absalom should have done is sought God.
Yes.
Vengeance is mine and I will repay. That's what God said. Thus saith our Lord. Not just vengeance is mine and, I'll decide whether I'm going to take it or not. That's his too. That would be his choice as well. But had Absalom sought God, had Absalom gone to the high priest or to Nathan and said, I need some advice. I need to know what to do because my brother Amnon forced himself on my sister Tamar, and I'm distraught. I want to kill him, but I know that it's not that life is not mine to take. So what would God have me to do?
And David could have approached God virtually with the same thing.
And
Yeah.
David should have done the same thing. God, what do I do in this situation? How horrible is this? I know it's my fault. I know that what I did is why this is coming about.
Yeah.
But what do I do now? What do I do now? How do I disown him when you didn't disown me? How do I punish him when you didn't punish me? I think God would say, I did punish you. I took your child away. I took away the illegitimate child. And if you don't think that that hurts, then you have no compassion in you. But David should have sought God. Absalom should have sought God. Amnon should have been seeking God and his advice. Hey, I have this unnatural thought about my sister. Help. Instead, he went to Jonadab.
Yeah.
Jonadab, who seems to be a bit of a sneaky fella, has his hand throughout this whole thing. See, it seemed like a good idea to Amnon, what he suggested to Amnon. Absalom come up with this plot for murder, and I have no doubt, just reading this chapter, that Jonadab is aware of what Amnon was going to do. Otherwise, how could he know that it was only Amnon that was killed? He knew ahead of time, that's how.
Yeah.
He's a plotter.
Yeah.
I believe that he has helped on both accounts.
Sure. I just cleared the way for one of them to be gone. David will seek the life of the other. Yeah, well, keep getting there until the family wipes itself out, and then someone else can step in and be king. Jonadab raises his hand. Why not me? I was his advisor.
Yeah.
I was an advisor to all of them. And if Israel were smart, they'd say, yeah, that's why they're all gone. Jonadab is very underhanded.
Yes.
And his hand is throughout all this. You see it in this whole chapter. He's throughout all of it. He has the knowledge of every bit. He knew that if Tamar came there to Amnon's house, what Amnon would do. He knew full well. Oh, he did what? Talks to Absalom. And I don't doubt that Jonadab had his hand in Absalom's plot, because he knew exactly who it was that was dead. Even though the report to David was that all the sons were killed, Jonadab says, oh, no, it's just Absalom. How do you know that? David didn't stop to question. And no doubt, I mean, nothing against David. He is absolutely distraught at the news. And to hear somebody say, no, I think it's just Amnon. Not all your sons. Kind of brings a little bit of comfort. Is it just one? Is it just one? I mean, it's horrible that it's one. But at that moment, you don't want it to be everyone. David's not in a mindset to say, wait a minute, how do you know? It took him a little bit to kind of get through his fogged thinking with Saul before he went and asked the man, how do you know? How did you come by this knowledge? How is it you bring me his crown and his bracelet? Oh, well, he asked me to kill him. Yeah, okay. Jonadab's that guy, only he's getting by with it. We're going to hear about Absalom some more, and it's not good. It's not good. But Absalom right now thinks his father is weak. His father is weak. He wouldn't do anything to Amnon despite the horrible crime that it was. David should have done something. And I agree, he should have sought the Lord.
Yeah.
He should have gone to God and said, what do I do? I have myself in a heck of a pickle. I have a situation that I shouldn't have. Lord, how do I get out of this? How do I handle this? You don't get out of it. How do I handle this? Because you don't get out of your troubles. God will see you through them.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, I'll keep you from them. He says, I will see you through them. Powerful word, through. Important word, through.
He never forgives the consequence.
Right.
He'll forgive the sin.
Yeah.
He'll help you through the consequence,
Yeah.
but the consequence stays.
Yeah. But the consequence is there. You know, once you plant that seed, it's got to grow. It's got to grow. There's no ending it. It's going to grow. It's going to come to full harvest, and it's going to show up in your life. Yeah. And now for David, it has begun. Things are showing up in his life, and they're going to continue. And the book of Psalms shows us how tremendous David's love for God is. Because he acknowledges his sin. He acknowledges his wrongdoing. And he does seek God for advice. And that's why we have the beauty of the Psalms.
Yeah.
It's David's heart. And it's beautiful.
He said, my sin is ever before me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it's sad that this has to happen, but this is what happened because of what David did. This goes back to his lust, his covetousness, his adultery, and ultimately his murder that he committed. God said, it's coming from your own home. It's going to start there. And it did.
Well, it'd be very easy with how large his home is.
Yes.
How many women he has taken on as wives because of his weakness there.
Yeah. 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 And it is a weakness that he has there.
Yes.
You know, he has a weak spot for women, that's for sure. And he needed to have a soft spot for his daughter in this case and say, hey, this was wrong. She was traumatized. And what does she do? You know, she's been shamed. She's been humiliated. She's been ruined in this society. And what man's going to want her now? In that day and age. God. This is a sad chapter.
Very sad.
Yeah, it is. It's just.
And unfortunately, there's more sadness to come.
Yes, there is. Yeah, it's a very difficult time. Yeah. And that's all I have to say about that.
Good job, Dave. Thank you.